I've been rereading this recently published book by geneticist Adam Rutherford, which is called How to Argue with a Racist. I shall be devoting an entire video to reviewing this book, but for now I want to talk about one particular point he makes, a point which seems to me at least to be quite bizarre, although it ties in very closely with modern thinking on race. Rutherford sums up his views at the end of the book, which he says are backed by the latest research. He says, and I quote, "The primary physical characteristics of race are not representative of overall similarities or differences between people and populations. In other words, having a black skin does not suggest you automatically have any similarities with other people with black skins, or that it makes you in any inherent way different from people with white skins." Now, Adam Rutherford might be the most brilliant geneticist since Gregor Mendel, for all I know to the contrary, but he must surely know that this is nonsense. There is a very strong genetic component to the mental illness of schizophrenia. If one identical twin develops schizophrenia, there's a 50-50 chance that the other will. And this is the case even though with those separated at birth and raised with different families. Schizophrenia runs in families. The precise mechanism isn't known, but there's not the slightest doubt that there's a genetic mechanism at work here. Let's look at the National Health Service, the NHS fact sheet on the subject. It says it's likely that different combinations of genes make people more vulnerable to the condition. However, having these genes does not necessarily mean you'll develop schizophrenia. Well, yes, that's very well known. The NHS information sheet also says there's a connection between neurotransmitters and schizophrenia because drugs that alter the level of neurotransmitters in the brain are known to relieve some of the symptoms of schizophrenia. Research suggests schizophrenia may be caused by a change in the level of two neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin. In other words, schizophrenia is probably an organic disorder caused partly by genes and possibly by some chemical imbalance in the brain. People of African Caribbean heritage, including mixed race people, are 9 times more likely to develop schizophrenia than white people. Black Africans are 6 times more likely. There is something about being black which makes you very much more likely to develop schizophrenia. Above, I quoted Adam Rutherford. He said, "The primary physical characteristics of race are not representative of overall similarities or differences between people and populations." Yes, the primary physical characteristics in this race, in this case, are representative of overall similarities between people and populations. People with black skins are between 6 and 9 times as likely to develop schizophrenia. That's what I call a similarity. I need hardly say that most people are aware of the association of schizophrenia with black people already. They don't need to read a lot of complicated research. Hands up anybody who has read of a paranoid schizophrenia running amok in the street and perhaps stabbing people because he hasn't been taking his medications. And when they've heard of this, they've muttered to themselves, "I bet he's black." Is this racism, I wonder, or statistics? Simply the knowledge that such a person is likelier to be black than he is white? I'm talking about this today because it seems to me to be one of the clearest refutations of the ideas of people like Adam Rutherford that ethnicity is merely skin deep. It's only in the last few years that the situation with schizophrenia has become clear. When it first became apparent that black people were more prone to developing schizophrenia than white people were, various ingenious explanations were advanced, which put the blame for the situation firmly on white people's racism. In other words, it was white people that were causing the schizophrenia in black people. A popular theory, before the genetic and biochemical aspects of the illness were fully realised, was that black people had been driven mad by the experience of living in a racist society, that simply encountering racial prejudice had sent them off their heads. Another explanation offered was that white doctors, nurses and social workers misinterpreted what black people were saying and saw it as pathological behaviour. More black people are devoutly religious than white people. Some talk of hearing God speak to them. And this, of course, is classic psychosis country. The truth is, a lot of people of African origin have a genetic disposition towards this mental illness, which is quite interesting. The change in perspective which has taken place, whereby this is now openly acknowledged, rather than the diagnosis being attributed to racial prejudice, makes me wonder if a similar thing might be on the verge of happening with intelligence. At the moment, the orthodox view is that educational outcomes amongst black people are often due to racism, poverty, low expectations and so on. In other words, the poor educational outcomes are nothing actually to do with the black people per se. They are actually a product of society. This is precisely what used to be said about schizophrenia in black people. It may well be that with some of the latest research, about which I shall soon be talking, that a purely genetic or biological explanation might emerge.